Welcome to the Lighter Side of the Spectrum, a podcast where we explore how to find joy, connection, and growth while navigating the challenges of parenting kids and teens on the autism spectrum. Remember that inclusion and hope are key to making life better for everyone, and that even in the most challenging moments, there's always a lighter side. Now here's your host, David Kaufer.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the lighter side of the spectrum. I'm happy to have you join me again, and I'm super excited about today's episode. I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm joined by Kim Kredich. Kim and I actually go back, a year or so. I was trying to figure it out, Kim. I'll kind of give the backstory, but it's been a while. This is our first time actually, I think, having a conversation. But for background, Kim is the mother of three sons, one of whom was diagnosed with autism at 2.5 years back in 2001. Kim has served as a volunteer advocate for hundreds of students with disabilities in East Tennessee since she moved to Knoxville in 2005, working with families to help their children gain rightful supported inclusion in the general education environment in public schools through the IEP process. Kim also has degrees in music from Duke University and the New England Conservatory, and has created a very cool program called the Inclusive Children's Art Program. But since 2005, Kim has worked with attorneys in Tennessee to promote systemic change and awareness of the rights of people with disabilities. She's now training to become a spelling to communicate practitioner to better advocate for the vast population of non-speakers whose voices need to be heard in this world. Kim, welcome. Thank you again for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I touched on this a little bit earlier as far as like how long ago we kind of met virtually. Again, in today's world, it's kind of funny to say, yeah, we met. And here we are talking for the first time. But I do recall you reached out to me. So for those watching, Kim and I are both part of a Facebook group for, it's called, I think it's just Spellers, right? Just the Spellers community. That's now grown to, I saw it's over 4,000 people or so. It's really grown. It's a great resource. But about that time, it was about a year and a half ago that we were going through a legal battle with our school district for our son Stone, because as is the case with many school districts, they were not they weren't willing to accommodate him and with his letter boards. And I had posted about our challenges with the district, and Kim graciously reached out and offered support and assistance, and just kind of started the dialogue from there.
Yeah, I saw it and I thought, okay, I think I've advocated for 5 students now who use spelling to communicate. The one that started me off on that specific side of rights under IDEA and ADA is Peyton Culver, and he was in.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he was in a life skills class, or whatever you want to call it, in elementary school. The parents had reached out to me when they were just moving back from East Tennessee to Knoxville, and were trying to navigate the school system. Somebody gave them my number, as was happening. Lots of teachers, other parents, whatever. They'd just give my number, and people would call me, and I'd try to help. And I remember with Peyton, I had, like with every other kid, I said, look, you want them in the regular ed environment. That's regular ed classes with maybe pull out to resource. That's still a supplementary aid and service. And I was really trying to, I don't force it on them, but I just give my honest opinions. And Chad at that point said, we talked for about an hour and a half, and he said, yeah, I don't know. I just don't think we can rock the boat like that. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I did my best to, help advocate. And 5 years later, I get a text.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 5 years later, 5th grade, I get a text from Chad, and he's the head of Visit Knoxville. And one of my sons was at Savannah College of Art and Design and swam in the NAIA, and we were hosting that. And here's this guy who texts me, "Hey, I see Miles Kredich on the heat sheet." And I'm thinking, who is this? You know, when you have to scroll back through a text and, messages. And I said, oh, yeah, that's that really nice guy with a kid named Peyton, of course, for like after Peyton Manning. And here he was reaching out again, and they had discovered spelling to communicate about a year and a half before that. And Peyton
Okay.
really becoming more and more open, and they were seeing, hey, he is smart. He should be in regular ed. And so that's actually how I learned about it. And fast forward a little bit, got him in. I was working behind the scenes, helping them navigate. They even had an S2C person go in for a meeting, and the school just said, junk science. It doesn't, we don't.
Right.
So I sort of figure out a few ways through ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, just to get literally their foot in the regular ed door. And there were people in that middle school who completely believed in him. And now he's in 10th grade and
Oh, great.
got a certified practitioner or a communication regulation partner on his IEP who will be fluent. They're now interviewing 5 people, but along the way they did work with training people to use the letterboard. Of course, he's now going for his regular ed diploma and has a blog, and there's a whole Peyton project, the Peyton Foundation, and it's so that's how, when you put that out, I said, hey, this is how we got there. And it was just sort of going on. And since I've met you, it's reached a lot of success. So
Yeah, and I'm glad that that's starting to get some traction. Again, like I said, I distinctly remember that because, well, first of all, when you're going through this, as you know, first of all, it's your head's kind of like constantly spinning as a parent, and you're also a parent of twins, right?
Yep.
And then you're an autism parent, and then you throw in non-speaking, and right, like there's this kind of thing, and then throw in, hey, we're going to take on the school district in a legal battle, right? So your head starts swimming kind of nonstop. But I do remember you talking about, because again, the angle, I think the traditional angle that most parents take and that they're familiar with, and because attorneys are also familiar with this, is the due process, right? Like that the child, basically, you're making the argument that, they're not receiving accommodation to receive the education, and that's
right.
their right, and that they deserve these, whatever accommodations it may be. There's all kinds in school. But
Well,
that's the
I remember that you had said something about IDEA, and then I said, well, it's actually under ADA. I think that was the conversation, if I remember. And you said, wait, I thought they were totally separate. I said, well, they overlap. And so then I said, I'll message you. And then we just started messaging. We became great friends.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's been wonderful. But yeah, so I think that's, like I said, I think that's just really important for people, again, especially whether they're in the spelling community or looking into spelling, if they have a non-speaking, autistic child who's, challenged to communicate, that they should try to look into the ADA approach, I think is probably a better approach, knowing what I know now, like if we were to go back, if we had to go back, I think that would be the approach that I would go.
Yeah, and I think the best example that really seems to resonate with a school district is to say it's just, you have American Sign Language interpreters, so that's the same thing. That's the preferred method of communication, and under ADA, you're entitled to your preferred method of communication. And so in the school districts, you say, well, you provide, and you pay for American Sign Language interpreters. Why wouldn't you do a communication regulation partner who's trained? Why will you pay? I think it's about $65,000 a year, even up to $70,000 for an ASL
Oh,
interpreter.
wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. And so we'd heard from the school district. They said when Kim said that, that's when a light bulb went off like Right. This is just the same thing. You've got to have a way to communicate. And so if that's what especially has worked with Peyton and other spellers to show that they are right in there and it's just a matter of motor and this is the way they're able to communicate, that is under Americans with Disabilities Act as a right.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think, again, most reasonable, logical people would say the same thing. But, and this is speculative, and we'll get into some other things, but I'm just kind of curious from your experience. Now, again, you've had success. I've talked to parents, probably as you have too, around the country, and more times than not, they're running into serious roadblocks, serious roadblocks in terms. Now, again, maybe because they haven't taken the ADA approach, they've taken the IDEA, the due process angle. And I think that by its nature, kind of the school districts kind of set up kind of more roadblocks because that requires assessments and standardized tests and kind of all these things that can really kind of, trip up our kids. But I'm curious, like, why do you think school districts have been so against this?
Well, you got to realize too, this is a very small fraction of cases that I've helped with. It was mostly just least restrictive environment, inclusion of students with autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, you name it, just the students that they would normally segregate. And of course, that includes students who are now discovering S2C. It hasn't been around for so long, and I've been around for a lot longer in this advocacy world, feeling old. But I think that it is the tsunami is coming. I say that there's been just ego and digging in people digging in their heels as professionals with ASHA, the big organization, American Speech Association. They have a position statement against it. That said, a lot of people are now seeing, once you see it, you can't unsee how amazing these people are to have actually been trapped for so long inside themselves. And when you experience those words that are coming out of that mind and that heart, that's when you get people advocating for the inclusion and the services. I just think that it's very hard for people who have taken one approach and felt like their whole profession has depended on that approach to
Yeah.
It's nothing new. It's like Earth was flat until it wasn't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to bring people along, and but when people do get in the way, you have to, like, we voted Peyton's team proposed getting rid of speech therapy on his IEP to get the speech therapist off, who was just completely against it. And she retired right after anyhow. She was just somebody who was terribly insulting in meetings, and you were never going to change her mindset. And so we all agreed to say, you're not on the team anymore. I don't know.
Adios. Right.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, Kim, and actually, again, going back to kind of the Facebook group, I know that just, very recently, it was within the day or two, someone was asking that very question in terms of speech therapy and the value of it. And again, of course, it's going to vary depending on the individual. But, once they start spelling, but, it's kind of like, what is the value of something, some of these different therapies when you're dealing with something that's really, again, it's motor driven. Right? Like, this is what we've learned. This has nothing to do with, speech or, cognitive issues. And the example I use is, Stone went through speech therapy, probably had 3 different speech therapists over, 12 years. And, he can use some language, right? He can speak a little bit. He has words. But again, we found out because of apraxia, the example I always use is he'd say, no pizza, no pizza. when actually, we found out he actually wanted pizza, right? Like, so again, it wasn't even very reliable.
Yeah, I mean, that's just I always say with S2C, I came up with my own slogan, said, it's not magic, it's motor. It's
Like that.
yeah,
That's true. That's
yeah,
100%.
it is all there. It's right here in like the different areas right here, Warnicki's and Broca, and then it's the motor strip that is needs to it's like you get in a car and you know all the rules of the road, you know how to drive, you know where you want to go, you know how to get there. If you get in a car and let's say the conditions are icy, you can't control that car. Or there's something like you're out of gas. Okay, that car isn't going to work to get you where you need to go. So I always think of S2C as all right, you're going to get out of that car and you're going to walk to it. And it might take a longer time to get there, but
That's a great analogy.
yeah, that's the thing that makes sense. It's not cognitive, it's motor. Being able to communicate takes motor with our mouths, with, if you're not in control of a car.
If you can't control it, right. If you can't,
Yeah,
right.
then
It's, yeah, we could take that analogy how far, but like saying in a car, let's say you put the car, put the gear into drive, but it goes in reverse,
exactly.
right?
It's not
Or, and you turn the steering wheel right, but the car goes left.
exactly.
It's going to be a pain in the ass to drive that car. You're not going to be a very successful driver. It's not because you don't know what to do. You're doing the right thing, but then the car's not responding in the way.
Yeah, but you're judged by what the car does.
Yes.
By what going over there? Why'd you hit into that? Why can't you go? Like, so it's that judgment. I think back to your question is why is it so hard? Well, because like you said, no pizza, doesn't mean no pizza. It meant I did want pizza. I just couldn't stop
Right.
myself from saying that. And that blew my mind for quite a while too. I mean, I love having my mind blown. I love learning.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about that too.
I just love that. It's like it. And if I'm wrong about something, I'm thrilled to be, corrected and learn more and then open my mind to even more possibilities. But that, I have found that especially when you're sitting around in an IEP meeting and people have been telling parents what their kid can and can't do for a long time, it's very rare to get someone to all of a sudden switch their entire way of thinking and especially if their ego is involved. But it does happen, and I think it's happening more and more. And it's really exciting, especially in Knoxville. I have to say, we've got a good little hub going on now.
That's awesome. I really am. I'm so happy to hear that because, like you said, unfortunately, we're still hearing a lot of the other, but and some of it again, obviously, is just from a society standpoint, right? Like this systemic bias against this population.
Well, sorry, our Ben is like he wasn't speaking, and then he did gain reliable speech, so he kind of straddled both worlds of that in throughout school, and he just he would get in sound loops and everything, and then he was able to talk more reliably, like talk about the like lighter side of autism. We just got all of the challenges, but then because he spoke at a later time, he did really kind of cool things with language because he was sort of learning it later on, and he developed this amazing vocabulary and way of thinking. So, yeah, I can tell you. You want to hear? Well, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Because that makes you realize everything that was always going into his awesome brain, and then it had a chance to get out. Ben and I drove 14 hours to surprise his younger brother. They all, were swimmers, all three boys. And Coleman, who's now graduated from college and living in New York and doing some finance job I don't understand. He was doing an open water swim in Fort Myers. And
Oh,
we
wow.
were out at like the Outer Banks of North Carolina for some reason, and we just thought, I was like, Ben, let's just drive down. You know, my husband and other son were somewhere else. We did that. Well, that was 14 hours overnight, and my husband Matt got us a great place, great discount, but in a nice hotel down in Fort Myers. So we just went, right? It's like, let's go up for an adventure, surprise Coleman. And we're driving down, and I look back, and Ben has wrapped the seatbelt around himself. He must have been about 15 or so, and it it didn't look right. He had somehow wrapped it around, and you know how it tightens up. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
yeah. And I look back, and he was sort of all twisted up in it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I get off on at a rest stop, and I had to go to the bathroom, and he was like, Mom, I can't, I'm stuck. And I'm like, okay. And so I went in, and I used the facilities, and I came out to the desk, and I said, I need scissors. And I get out there, and by the time I get back out there, he's completely naked and so upset and crying. And I'm like, and so I take the scissors, and I cut that. There was no getting him out of it. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
that seatbelt, you're in for probably a $500 repair. So you've got to really judge whether you can actually get him
Yeah.
this. But it got to the point where I'm just cutting the seatbelt.
Sure.
And so, needless to say, it was stressful, is what I'm trying to say. It was a stressful drive.
To say the least.
Okay. And I drove through the night, and we're pulling into the parking deck at like 6:30 in the morning. And I'm just so tired. I've driven through, and we had that terrible experience. Of course, he had to move to the other seatbelt because now that one doesn't
Right
work.
now, you had to get a
And we
working
fixed it
seatbelt.
before we traded it in or whatever. But so we get in there, and he's like, he's fascinated with, at that time with the legal system. And so he's just talking away and said, Mom, is so-and-so the court-appointed attorney? And I'm like, he's trying to find a parking space. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure he's the court-appointed attorney, because Ben was never wrong. He had looked it up or whatever. He said, but if his client is found guilty, he'll be the court-disappointed attorney. And I'm just like, what? Oh my gosh, that's like,
Right.
I told that joke to so many attorneys.
Oh,
I mean,
right. That's
when
awesome. That's classic.
like, that's one of my favorite crazy memories of talk about the tough side and the stressful side, and then
All
the
wrapped in one.
yeah. So, and
No, that is the perfect. You're right. Like that's
yeah.
kind of encapsulates the parenting experience, like right there. I hope you're enjoying the lighter side of the spectrum. So far, we're commercial free, but if you're finding value here, one way to support the show is by considering me for a speaking engagement. I speak on unlocking potential, whether it's for individuals like my son or for entire organizations. I also offer fractional CMO services for businesses needing strategic marketing support without the full-time commitment, drawing on over 35 years of experience in marketing. My agency has helped companies and healthcare practices increase their value, grow, and even prepare for acquisition. To learn more about my speaking topics, visit davidkoffer.com. Or if you're interested in our marketing or fractional CMO services, check out koffermarketing.com. If you're enjoying this episode, please leave a review. Your feedback means a lot, and it helps me make this podcast even more useful. Lastly, don't forget to share it with anyone who would appreciate the insights and stories we're sharing here. Thanks again for listening. I'm heartbroken. I never had the opportunity to meet Ben. Of course, you and I met after he left you and left us.
Yeah, he was, or I think maybe we had been on Stellars, and then the terrible thing happened
Okay. Yeah.
in August of last year, so 2023. Ben was employed he had gone all the way through high school included, went to the University of Tennessee future program, so was there for 4 years
Oh,
in
wow.
post-secondary college experience, and graduated. And he did a lot of volunteer jobs and was then hired. He played piano beautifully, and he was hired to play at assisted living centers. He was playing at 4 at that time, and so he'd get dressed up in his piano tie and they just loved him there. He had this little like card called the Piano Man, Ben Kredich Piano Man.
Oh,
He just had a piano lesson virtually because at COVID they realized, oh, they could do this virtually, and he was living independently with just our support, you know, going just taking him to the grocery store, but he could cook for himself and did all his laundry.
oh, wow.
Yeah, just about a mile away from our house. Things we never thought would ever happen, and he was doing it. I always thought, wow, we're really living the dream. It's not like everything was easy peasy, but it was
No, but that's significant. I mean, again, that's
very.
huge. That's
So
huge.
in the afternoon after his piano lesson, they cut the bus service from our neighborhood to downtown, and he had actually advocated for it to return with his twin brother Miles. He got up and read a whole great speech, but he took to walking. It was 3 miles, and it's beautiful here, and there's a sidewalk on the main road, and he got really good at independently walking there because every Monday night he would meet Matt at a great restaurant called Sunspot and loved the fries. And so, well, the fries and Coke, and that's where they'd meet. So around, 3 or 2:30, he'd start walking down. If the weather was nice. If not, we'd give him a ride. But it was something that he was good at doing, could do independently, and enjoyed it. And he was walking eastbound towards downtown to meet Matt, and someone also driving eastbound. And this is a 4-lane road but with a sidewalk that people could walk on. And someone passed out. He had actually overdosed and been Narcaned just a few hours before, Narcan twice, and refused treatment when the ambulance took him to the hospital. So I don't know if you know how Narcan works, but they can appear sober because the opioid receptors go off, but then they'll come back on again. Paired. So that man passed out and crossed 2 lanes of oncoming traffic with cars swerving, and hit Ben from behind and killed him instantly at 4 in the afternoon. So that is not the lighter side of autism. That is
No, but I mean, it's just,
but of course you and I know that I'm on here because he had such a beautiful life, and we
a tremendous life. I mean, again,
and
that's a success. I mean, that's what we're all striving for, Kim, is like you said, whatever level of independence, is, I mean, my God, it's just, that's a success. It's not,
and
we don't expect it to be easy, but you want to, and it means, I'm sure it meant so much for Ben. That's the thing, this means so much to them. I know for some, they appreciate those steps as we do, right? Of independence.
and he did a whole lot to be included all that time, and in school, and have real friends and go to University of Tennessee. And
Oh, yeah.
he had just gone on a bro trip with Coleman, they both went up before Coleman moved to New York. They both went up to visit Ben's twin Miles in Chicago, and they did this big long road trip. And so they were in their sort of element, and it was tough because both brothers were then not going to be here. And we kind of say, well, he always had his brothers because it was the month that Coleman had moved to New York that this happened. But he got to travel the world. Matt took him to the European Championships in Rome,
Oh, cool.
specifically because Ben was so into this one like true crime thing that he followed, and he wanted to go to Rome to see where it all
Go to the scene of the
yeah,
crime.
crime and
Oh,
the
wow.
memorial. It was a drug deal gone wrong, drug bust gone wrong, and Finn and Gabe. I don't even know if you know about, but if these two
Oh, no, sorry.
so anyhow, Matt um, just brought him along to European swim championships where he was coaching, and of course we went to London to walk Abbey Road and Montreux, Switzerland to the Queen Museum, the Queen, the band.
The band, but yeah, right. The band, let's be clear here.
Everything about Queen, like what outfit Freddie Mercury wore on what concert, where,
Wow.
everything. So yeah, we did that. That was sort of a philosophy, I guess, we had all along and still have in a lot of ways. I feel like we're still following Ben's lead, but we were a floor time, or still are. We are a floor time family. We didn't do the applied behavioral analysis that people, said we should do. We couldn't afford it, at that point.
Yep.
But it really just the floor time relationship based follow the child's lead. It just worked for us. And Ben had all these skills, like he could spell and spell backwards, and he could name all the countries and capitals. So we were really looking for these. He had all these skills, perfect.
Right.
It was really the connection, and through, I think, just a lifetime of honoring that philosophy, it made our whole family just who we are, and that's what I think led to Ben's beautiful life, even as sad as it is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Okay.
way too short, but you gave him a very, full and fulfilling life. To be clear, I mean, it's a beautiful family that, like I said, I've been able to, watch. That is the plus side of social media. I will say, I'm one of those. I've been both working and participating in it for a long time, and it's definitely a double-edged sword. There's some negatives, but there's so many positives. Again, you and I wouldn't have this relationship and have a chance, as well as many others, to see that and to, share in those milestones, right? And trips across the pond and all that. So, I really thank you for sharing that. It's, I guess that's something that you had shared a little bit before, but I didn't know all that about him. And I think it's really special how you're honoring him, and talk about, where are you officially in your practitioner training? I know you've been studying hard and doing, you've been working at it hard.
I'm telling you, 57 years old, going back to school is, let's just say, I went to college with a typewriter. So having to prepare a document and go on this thing called Canvas and use Google Drive. It's more technologically challenging than I was probably up for, but this old dog is learning a few new tricks. So I'm right at the beginning. We've been in it just a month, and I've just started. Most other people are parents or have already been CRPs and have spelled. I haven't spelled with a single person.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, it advocated for people.
Yeah.
And in fact, I told my best friend Jody, whose son, she has 3 kids, and Michael was Ben's best friend, and Michael is a completely unreliable speaker, and but pushed for inclusion for both of them, and through modified content. Michael was always in regular class, also went to UT Future, and after I realized, right, Peyton doesn't have any words, and yet then I advocated for a young man named Cole, and he did have words, and he kept saying he'd have words, but he'd spell. Don't listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm spelling, and that's when it hit me, and it was not long before, it was just a few months before Ben died, actually, I introduced Jody to spelling to communicate. And all of a sudden their whole world opened up like crazy, to the point where now Michael is taking Ben's spot in Miles's groomsman in the wedding.
Oh,
And
that's so cool.
he has prepared a speech, a toast on the letterboard. So
Oh my gosh, that's so
yeah,
cool.
it goes way beyond, it just keeps carrying on. So yeah, it's life changing, and it I just keep going wherever I just feel a good force. And even though it's daunting going back to school, um, I'm really excited about it, because it will allow me to know everything about spelling to communicate, so that I can bring my advocacy knowledge, which I think this movement needs. I've done it
100%. Oh
I've
yeah.
done it on the other side, not having a speller, but having advocated for spellers. So yeah, that's where I'm going.
No, I think that's so powerful because I think, in all seriousness, I think when a lot of the practitioners, and particularly the new practitioners, they're doing it for the right reasons, right? They want to help, help families, help these spellers. But then, like we were just talking about, they kind of get unleashed out there. And then you have families like ours, you go through the first, right? And everyone gets so excited. They're like, oh my God, we got to get these letter boards, in our schools. And practitioner, can you help us? And they're like, I don't, that's not, they're not trained for that. They're trained, they're trained to be, practitioners and communication partners. So they're not trained to be advocates. They don't know the law. And so I think that it's awesome. Like I said, I think that's where you're going to have such an important role to be kind of a leader and trailblazer to kind of see how we can mesh those together. I think that's a real need in our community.
Yeah, that's why I'm doing it. Yep.
All right. So on the lighter side, we thought we would, share tips of the week. Like I said, there's nothing like we said, nothing like being a parent, nothing like being an autism parent. So we've come up with a little jingle. We'll see if this works. Working with our trusted producer, Dave. Dave, what do you think?
Hey fellas, gather around, it's time to speak. We're here with your tip of the week. Strategies and wisdom just for you. Autism parents, we know what you go through.
All right. Yeah. So it goes on and on, but I think that's good for a jingle. That's not bad, right? We'll throw that together. All right. So
this producer thinks it was excellent, but but this producer also thought we had to go with the shorter version and not the version that would have touching as
taken
it
the rest of the
be.
pod.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
right. Well, thanks. All right. So Kim, what do you got? Do you have a tip of the week?
So I guess my tip, I'll use Jody, who I just talked about, my friend who, I mean, we went through everything together. We went through breast cancer together. We both got breast cancer at the
Oh my
same
gosh.
We're bald. We were going through
Oh my gosh.
chemo, radiation. We did the whole thing. Yeah. When I say best friends, we just went through it all with Michael and Ben and our, other kids and wonderful husbands. But we would, this is a secret. Well, I guess it's not a secret anymore. But instead of, our tip was, we would just say to each other, because when you're the parent of someone with autism, you have to do more. You're not just your average parent. And if you've got also other kids, you got to do more for everybody, and you got to figure it out. And so we determined that we were better than everybody else. I'm joking, but not really. I would say that we actually acknowledged how hard it was, and that we had to do more than your average parent. And so our little thing would just be like, after we just look at each other and we'd be like, we just go like this. So I'd say my tip of the week is to just get an attitude, just a
Oh, I like that.
attitude with a friend, where you've gotta laugh. You've gotta be, you've gotta acknowledge that it's very hard, and you've always gotta have, uh, sense of humor, obviously. But I'll
It's a
do
must.
I was just thinking about how the just funny things, like we're always laughing about something funny. And then, it was hard, so we'd be like, "Oh," but we'd always find a way to just look on the lighter side. And so a little Ben story, he'd get he got really good at packing, like for Rome, right? And he didn't always I was like the no mom, I can do it myself, which is like, okay. But he did need sort of some guidance in okay, what to pack. And so he got really good at, texting and everything. And so he said, what dad says I need to ask you what to pack, right? So I'm like, okay, 7 t-shirts, 5 pairs of pants. And then he'd say, so 10 pants. If you think about it, like 5 pairs of pants does equal 10 pants.
Right.
We have these funny text things like, okay, 4 pairs of socks. He's like, right, it's 8 socks, and you're
Hey,
like,
socks, right.
pants are funny because they don't
But
come apart, but it's a pair. And so
it's,
I started just doing emojis for like pants, 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 pants. Yes.
oh, that's smart. There you
Yeah.
go.
I mean,
Tip. Use emojis.
yeah, things like that would just make me laugh just to myself, like, and once again, my mind is blown open by, yeah, why do we call them pairs of pants when we don't
It
fit?
makes no it makes no sense whatsoever. But no, that's a great tip. And I love that. Like you said, it really is kind of like leaning into it, right? And just kind of taking the fight to the challenge rather than letting it, because again, like you said, it can be hard. There, rough days and especially again, we are dealing with non-speaking or unreliable speakers who face all these challenges, like you said, on their own. It's good. I like that tip. And then again, going back to, I'm just
Use emojis.
yeah, emojis. And that's a goal for us. I really want to get to that point. We're not there yet with Stone in terms of texting yet. He'll get there soon because his typing has gotten so good. It's just on the list of things to do, right? Like it's just like we got to check this off and check that off. So, you and I will finally have a chance to meet in person. Looking forward to that in the spring. You're going to be coming out to our neck of the woods, right?
Yeah, NCAAs for swimming and diving is all in Seattle. And so I might road trip it with our dog, Shep, and then meet Matt out there. And then I think Miles and Coleman are planning to come out as well. Wow, Miles will be an old married man by that time. So,
That's right.
maybe
That's right. Well, he'll be still in the honeymoon stage, right? Like the first, right?
Yeah, they've been dating for 6 years, obviously, but they're getting married in like 2.5 weeks. So
How exciting.
yeah, it's all exciting. It is exciting, and but we're all excited to meet up in the Seattle area and cheer on the Tennessee Vols and meet you.
Well, we're excited about that too. Stone's a huge swimming fan. He loves watching it on TV, YouTube. His twin brother Ty used to be on the high school swim team for a number of years, and we still have old videos that he loves to pull up and watch those. He said, so yeah, we're looking forward to that.
And
we'll
we're gonna outfit him.
I'll allow it.
We're gonna outfit him in some. Yeah, he is going to be a Vols fan and as he pointed out, the Ducks don't have a swim team. The Oregon Ducks,
Right.
which I told him was ironic because they're Ducks.
They're
But
right.
now I figure like he's easily swayed with some good bright orange merch.
It'll be great. I'm looking, and we'll definitely get pictures and throw that up on the website. But well, there's so much more we could talk about, but I think we'll have to wrap it up for today, Kim. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, sharing all of your stories and knowledge with us. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate, like I said, all that you've provided to us as a resource and as a friend.
It's my pleasure. And just just keep thinking good thoughts about me and technology as I make my way through.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. I will. Yeah. I have all the confidence in the world. So again, thank you to the listeners too for joining us on our Lighter Side of the Spectrum podcast. If you liked it, feel free to share it with your friends, family, anyone else who has an interest in this topic. You'll find us at all the places you find a podcast. If you want to learn more about me, go to davidcopper.com. Until next time, we'll catch you later.